Welcome to video 5 in the genetics video series by Mr. Caputi. This is Punnett Squares level 1. Before you get started with Punnett Squares level 1, you should make sure that you have read and answered the What is DNA questions, watched the DNA Basics video, taken the quiz on DNA Basics, watched the mRNA transcription video, read and answered transcription and translation and overview, taken the quiz on transcription, watched the protein translation video, read and answered the protein translation questions, read and answered the danger of giving bad directions, taken the quiz on translation, watched the genetic traits video, read and answered the genetic traits questions, and hopefully taken the quiz on genetic traits and did phenomenally well. You can follow along with today's video on the Punnett Square Steps to Success reading, and then on the back of it are the Punnett Square Level 1 questions. You will want to make sure that you have both of these, as it's going to provide you with a handout and a guide in order to answer genetics questions from now on, called the Punnett Square. Again, starting way back, remember that the whole purpose of this is talking about DNA and how the information in DNA codes for proteins that control who we are. All right, the individual letter sequence is what's going to control which proteins get made. Which proteins get made control a lot of physical characteristics about each of us. Remember, as a review too, that the process of DNA gets copied into RNA so that it can leave the nucleus and transfer its information. That's a process known as transcription. And then that RNA is sent to the ribosome where it is translated into an amino acid sequence. Those amino acids are the protein. Also remember, as a quick review from last time, how splitting of genes works. All right, so we have your dad on the left and your mom on the right. It's a complete 50-50 random split as far as which chromosomes go in which egg and which chromosomes go in the other egg. So these can go into that one and these can go into that one. It's a complete random 50-50 split. And the really interesting result of this is that you can get brothers and sisters who look really different because it depends which of mom's genes and which of dad's genes they have. All right, so if we take a look at this over here, we can see another example of how this looks. All right, dad has one brown-eyed gene and one blue-eyed gene. Mom has one brown-eyed gene and one blue-eyed gene. There's a 50-50 chance that dad will give either of his. There's a 50-50 chance that mom will give either of hers. So let's say in this case, dad gives blue and mom gives brown. All right, 50-50 chance that that will happen. They also both could have given their blue. They both could have given their brown. Who knows? All right, in this case though, since our little kid here got blue eyes from his dad and brown eyes from his mom, do you remember what color his eyes will be? Hopefully you know that his eyes should be brown. If you don't, if you were kind of confused about that, you should probably go back to the last video. Why were they brown? Well, remember that brown is the dominant trait. All right, dominant traits show if there's both a dominant and a recessive trait present. All right, in this case, blue eyes are recessive and brown eyes are dominant. So if you have both blue-eyed genes and brown-eyed genes, you have brown eyes. Now, there's a couple new vocab terms that I want to talk about before we get going. The first one is phenotype. Phenotype refers to the physical appearance of a trait, and the easiest way to remember that is the P in there. Phenotype is the physical appearance of a trait. So that's what you look like or what you seem like. So that's, do you have blonde hair? Do you have blue eyes? Do you have sickle cell anemia? Are you a mouse with red eyes? All right, it's the physical appearance of that trait or what it looks like. Genotype is a little bit different. Genotype is the gene pair that leads to that trait. All right, so let's take a look at an example of what some of the differences are. So when we refer to phenotype, what we're looking at are the actual physical trait. So are you a kid with brown eyes or are you a kid with blue eyes? The physical trait, brown or blue, is what's called the phenotype. Now the genotype, on the other hand, is the pair of genes that are responsible for each trait. So in this case, do you have two brown genes, a brown gene and a blue gene, or a blue gene and a blue gene? All right. Now, one thing about when we start using brown and blue and we start looking at more and more traits is that eventually it gets kind of long to write brown or blue every time that we write it. So we use a scientific abbreviation when we start talking about these. And instead of using the whole word, what we're going to use is a single letter. And that single letter will represent the gene that we're talking about. All right. In this case, when we talk about eye color, we're going to start to use the letter B. All right, now you may ask yourself, how are we going to distinguish brown from blue if we're only using one letter? The way that we do that is by using capital letters or lowercase letters. In this case, it could be either B, big B, or little b. Since, or I should say, whatever the dominant trait is gets the capital version of the letter. Whatever the recessive version of the trait is gets the lowercase version of the letter. So in this case, if you had brown eyes from your mom and brown eyes from your dad, your genotype would be big B, big B. All right, brown is big B and brown is big B. If you had brown eyes from your mom and blue eyes from your dad, or the other way around, you would be big B, little b, because brown is big B, blue is little b. Last but not least, if you were blue-eyed and blue-eyed for your genes, you would be little b, little b. All right, that would be your genotype. So whenever we say the word genotype from now on, remember that we're going to be talking about these two-letter combinations. There's also one more piece of vocabulary that we need to address when we start talking about genotypes. All right, and it's how scientifically and genetically we describe different genotypes. All right, and those terms are homozygous and heterozygous. Now, you've heard these terms probably a lot before, especially the prefix homo and hetero, and it has to do with either the same or it has to do with different. When we say homo, what we're referring to are the same genes. So this is always referring to a genotype. So if we say the same genes, what we're referring to is two of the same letters, so either both capital or both lowercase. Now you could actually talk about it in both ways. You could be homozygous dominant, and so that means you have the same letter and it's the dominant letter, which means that you would be big B, big B. You could also be homozygous recessive, which means that it's the same letter, but it's the recessive letter. So in this case, little b, little b. Now your last option is to be heterozygous, and that means that the letters are different. And in that case means you would be big B, little b. So whenever we say homozygous dominant, referring to big letter, same letter, dominant letter. Whenever we say homozygous recessive, we're referring to little letter, all right, same letter, recessive letter. And if we ever use the term heterozygous, that means that we're referring to different letters, so the big letter and the little letter together. All right, now why is this important? Well, before we get to that, one common question that people always ask, yeah, this is kind of a creepy picture. All right, one common question that people ask is, well, we're talking a lot about brown eyes and blue eyes. Well, what about like hazel eyes or green eyes or eyes that are different color or splotchy? All right, those are all controlled by different genes other than just the blue-brown gene. The reason we focus primarily on blue eyes and brown eyes is that it's easy to track one trait. There will be a video in the future that you can watch that's about tracking multiple traits at the same time to see what color eyes you would have. So for now, don't worry so much about the green eyes and the hazel eyes, and we'll just think of the world in either blue-eyed versions or brown-eyed versions. All right, if you have green eyes or hazel eyes, you're special and we'll talk about you later. All right, now one of the ultimate questions of genetics is that you would be able to predict a probability that you would be able to have a certain child that would look a certain way. But this prediction we haven't really done yet in terms of probabilities. When we talk about a probability, we're essentially talking about a percentage, a lot like flipping a coin. So what is the probability that the coin would land on heads? Well, there's two options. It's either heads or tails, and it's a 50-50 chance. So the probability it would land on heads is 50%. The probability it would land on tails is 50%. Now, how can we do this when it comes to genetics? Well, let me introduce you to the most amazing tool that you will use in all of genetics. That is the Punnett Square. All right, now, while the Punnett Square might look like 4 simple boxes to you, it is actually an incredibly powerful genetics tool. All right, and you will rely on the Punnett Square in order to calculate a significant amount of the genetic probabilities that you bring. Now, how can 4 small boxes do all of that work? Well, we need to expand it just a little bit. All right, this is the Punnett Square steps to success. You'll notice a certain number of blanks here to fill out. If you could fill out every one of these blanks, you actually could answer any genetics question possible about a situation. All right, a couple of the blanks that we see on here, we have On the side, we have information about mom and dad. We have the genotype, which is their 2-letter code, and the phenotype of what they look like. And you'll notice that we have that for both mom and for dad for both of those. All right. We have our Punnett Square over here, which we're going to use in a bit. We also have another section over here, all right, on this side that has to do with the different possibilities of information. So the first things that we have for information are what are the dominant phenotype in this situation and what is the recessive phenotype. And then in these blanks here, here, and here, essentially what you would put are what are the genotypes that would lead to that phenotype. And if you're a little lost, don't worry about it. You'll pick it up as it goes along. The last section is this section over here. You're going to again write genotypes. And for each one, you're listing what is the possibility here of the homozygous dominant genotype. And so in this blank, you're going to end up writing what the homozygous dominant genotype is. And in this blank, you'll write what the percentage likelihood to get that would be. Same thing for heterozygous, same thing for homozygous recessive. And again, if you're lost, that's perfectly fine. We'll go over it multiple times. All right, that's just a brief overview of what we're going to do with this chart. So I think the easiest way to learn how to do it is to put it into action, though. So let's take a look at a potential genetics problem. Now, this problem can be found in the bottom of your Punnett Square Steps to Success paper. It's the example problem. The example problem reads, brown eyes, big B. Now remember, we're using single letters here, and brown eyes get the big B because it's the dominant trait. So brown eyes, big B, are dominant to blue eyes, little b. Calculate all offspring percentages if a big B father mates with a little b mother. All right, now this is a very typical style of writing a genetics problem. When it says all offspring percentages, essentially what we're referring to is that you're going to need to fill out each of these percentage columns over here. All right, the dominant phenotype percentage, the recessive phenotype percentage, the homozygous dominant percentage, the heterozygous percentage, and the homozygous recessive percentage. All right, really it's 5 answers every time. All right, now, in order to answer this problem, we're going to go through the steps to success listed at the top. We're going to start off with the first one. Number 1. Figure out what the dominant and recessive phenotypes, so the looks are on the top right, and we're going to fill them out. In this case, it tells us right in the question, brown eyes, big B, are dominant to blue eyes, little b. So what we'll do is we'll actually write in next to where it says dominant phenotype, we'll write in the dominant phenotype is brown eyes, whereas the recessive phenotype is blue eyes. All right. Look at that. That was easy, right? Number 2, fill in all of your possible genotypes, letter combinations on the side. All right, now for this, there's actually 6 spots that we need to fill out. We'll start on the bottom. Homozygous dominant. Remember, homozygous means same letter. Dominant means the capital letter. So in this blank, you'd write whatever letter we're using, because it's going to be different based on which trait. For eye color, we use B's. For hair color, we use H's. In this case, we're using eye color, and it's homozygous dominant. So the same letter, big letter. All right, heterozygous, that's different letters. So big B and then little b. And then homozygous recessive, same letter, recessive letter, little b, little b. So that's the first 3 blanks. And essentially what we're creating here is an outline that you're going to be able to fill in later. Now the other 3 blanks come from this section up here. And what you need to think about are what are the 2 different genotypes that would give you the dominant phenotype. Now you're going to have to think back to some of the stuff that we did last video. And the 2 ways to get brown eyes are that you can either have brown eyes from your mom and brown eyes from your dad, or brown eyes from one parent and blue eyes from the other parent. Either way will still have you have brown eyes because it's the dominant trait. So the way that looks is that you could have brown eyes from one parent and brown eyes from the other parent, or brown eyes from one parent and blue eyes from the other parent. Both of these 2 genotypes will actually give you the dominant phenotype. Now for the recessive phenotype, there's only one genotype that will give you that phenotype, and that's little. Check. All right. Number 2, done. Now, fill in the data that you know from the question. This is where you now have to read the question and start filling in what you know. Well, we know brown eyes are dominant to blue eyes, and we already figured that out. The information that's really important in the question has to do with what dad is and what mom is. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take the information about dad and mom and we're going to plug it in where it would be appropriate. In this case, a big B father. Big B is a genotype. So what we'll do is we'll plug in big B right there. Mates with a little b mother. So we'll put for mom, little b. Now this is all that you know from the question. All right, this is it. From here on out, we're going to actually have to use our logic skills to fill in all of the rest of this. All right, so now the way this works is we first start off with mom. If we know mom is little b, we actually also know what her phenotype is, because this will tell us this. If she's little b, she has to have blue eyes. All right, dad works the same way. If we know that he's big B, he has to have brown eyes. Okay, now here comes the tricky part of the Punnett Square. How do you put this information in? Well, what you do is you take one parent and you put it on each side of the Punnett Square. And it doesn't matter, I'll tell you right now, it does not matter which parent goes where. All right, usually I just put the mom at the top, but it really does not matter. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the big B from dad, and we're going to put it on the side. We'll put one big B right here, and his other big B right here. And then we're going to do with mom is label hers right here. We'll put one little b for mom here, and one little b for mom here. Now this Punnett Square, what it's going to allow us to do is show us all of the possible combinations that dad's sperm and mom's eggs can make in terms of babies. So what you do is you simply take a look at which lines up with which. In this case, there's a big B on top, a little b on top, and a big B on the side. So in this box, you'd write big B, little b. In this square right here, there's a little b on top, and there's a big B on the side. In this box would also be big B, little b. Down here in this one, there's a little b on top and a big B on the side. You could write big B, little b. And in this box over here, there's a little b on top and a big B on the side, and so you'd write big B, little b, Now it does not matter if you write little b, big B, or big B, little b. It means the same thing, as heterozygous is heterozygous. All right, now, if we look at this, what we can now know are all of the potential probabilities that will exist for this child. And we could take this information in here and actually plug it in to here. All right, this is all of the 4 possible combinations of sperm and eggs. So there's 4 possible combinations, and what you have to ask yourself is what probability then is each one. Of the 4 possible options, how many of those 4 are big B, big B? Hopefully you realize that none of those are big B, big B. So the probability of having a homozygous dominant child is 0, because none of our 4 squares are big B, big B. The next one is heterozygous. How many of our 4 squares are big B, little b? In this case, it's 4. So 4 out of 4 is 100%, which means the heterozygous genotype is represented 100% here. And then for homozygous recessive, how many of the boxes are little b, little b? And again, hopefully in this case you recognize it's none, and 0 out of 4 is equal to 0%, which means you put a 0 right here. Now the last step is to translate this information into the top information, and all you have to do is add them together. The top part, where it says the dominant phenotype, we know that the dominant phenotype is either big B or big B, little b. So what you do is you simply add big B, and big B, little b's percentage together and write it in. In this case, 0 plus 100 is 100. And then your little b goes in the little b box here. Now you have calculated every you have calculated all the offspring percentages. Now, what this tells you is something pretty interesting. All right. The first thing it tells you is that 100% of the kids are going to have brown eyes, and 0% of the kids are going to have blue eyes. It also tells you that none of the kids are going to be homozygous dominant, and none of the kids are going to be homozygous recessive. All of the kids will be heterozygous. Look at that. All right. What you can now do is continue doing this for the rest of your traits. All right. We're going to do a few more examples together. Brown eyes, big B, are dominant to blue eyes, little b. Calculate the offspring percentages of a big B father mates with a big B, little b mother. So let's go through this one more time. The dominant and recessive phenotypes, again, we're still looking at eye color. So in this case, we're going to have brown eyes, and we'd write that in, and blue eyes. All right. Step one, check. Fill in all of your possible genotypes. In this case, we're using the letter B. So heterozygous dominant is big B. I'm sorry, homozygous dominant is big B. Heterozygous is big B, little b. And homozygous recessive is little b. And then which two letters would give you brown eyes? Well, that's big B, and big B, little b. All right, so you get a brown eyes from mom, or brown eyes from one parent, brown eyes from another parent, or brown eyes from one parent and blue eyes from the other parent. You both have brown eyes. And then little b will give you blue eyes. All right, look at that. Already filled out. Step two, check. Fill in what you know from the question. In this case, all we know, again, is about mom and about dad. So we know that dad is big B, and mom is big B, little b. So we can then turn this information into some new stuff. But now we have to start thinking about it. If mom is big B, that means that she has brown eyes. If dad is big B, that means he has brown eyes. We then take the letters. We'll take dad's big B and split them up over here, big B and big B. We'll take mom's and put hers, big B, little b. Now we just line up our boxes. There's a big B right here and a big B right here. So in this box, it's big B, big B. There's a little b here and a big B here. So we have big B, little b. There's a big B up here and a little b over here. Or I'm sorry, big B there. So we have big B. And last but not least, we have a big B over here and a little b over here, which means we have big B, little b. We now turn this into the percentages on the other side. All right, so in this case, we have what percentage are homozygous dominant. In this case, there's 2 out of 4. 2 out of 4 equals 50%. So there's a 50% chance that the kids will be homozygous dominant. What percentage of them will be heterozygous? There's one here and one here. That's, again, 2 out of 4, which gives us 50%. What percentage will be homozygous recessive? Well, there's no squares that are little b, so 0 out of 4 equals 0%, so 0%. And then our last step from before is simply converting our information. We have what percent are big B, or big B, little b? You take both of these, add them together, and put them here, which in this case is 100%. And here, 0%. All right, all of our offspring percentage, there's a 100% chance that they'll have brown eyes, a 0% chance they'll have blue eyes, a 50% chance they'll be homozygous dominant, a 50% chance they'll be heterozygous, and a 0% chance that they'll be homozygous recessive. Okay, question 2 asks you a very similar thing. It's just you are going to try to do this one on your own now. All right, what you're going to do is I want you to fill it in, and then, or I want you to pause the video, fill it in on your own, and come back when you think you have all the answers completed. All right. When you're done, press play, and we'll go through the answers together. You should press pause now. Hopefully you filled in this part for part 1 of Step to Success, and for part 2. Then for part 3, where it's filling the data you know from the questions, both parents are heterozygous, so both parents should be big B, little b. Since you know both parents are big B, little b, both parents should have brown eyes. You should then take dad's genes and split them up on the side, and do the same thing with mom's genes on the other side. You should then fill in all of your Punnett Square boxes. And now you simply just need to transfer your information over. You'll see that for what percent are homozygous dominant, that's that square right there. That is 1 out of 4, which is 25%. How many of them are big B, little b? There's 1, 2. 2 out of 4, which is 50%. Last but not least, how many are little b, little b? Only 1. 1 out of 4 is 25%. Last but not least, translate your information up. How many of them are big B, or big B, little b? So that means how many of them will have brown eyes? Well, you take your 2 here, add them together, 25 plus 50, and you get 75%. How many of them will have blue eyes? 25% of those kids will have blue eyes. All right, now try this one completely on your own. You should pause the video now, complete the problem, and when you're done, press play. In this case, the question should get you to here. You'll notice that your mom is given the genotype, little b, she's homozygous recessive, whereas dad is actually given the phenotype, blue eyes. Since dad has blue eyes, you know he must be little b, and since mom's little b, you know she must have blue eyes. Which gives you a filled out Punnett square that looks like this. Which gives you a final answer that looks like this. None of the kids will have brown eyes, 100% of them will have blue eyes, none of them will be homozygous dominant, none of them will be heterozygous, and all of them will be homozygous recessive. Now try problem 4 on your own. In this case, it can be a little tricky because you might have to work backwards a little bit. Make sure you fill out steps 1, 2, and 3, and then try the problem on your own. You should press pause now, and when you are ready to check your answer, press play. Once you've gotten to this point, it can get a little tricky. In order to do this, we need to make sure that we are looking at our questions clearly. We know that the dad has to be big B. But all of his kids have to be big B, little b, which means since all of his kids have to be this way, that means that every box must be big B, little b. That means that 100% of the kids are big B, little b, and none of the kids are anything else. Now this is a little tricky because you have to actually work backwards from this. We know that dad has to be big B, so we'll put dad on the side here. And what you need to realize is that in order to get big B, little b, if dad's got the big B, that means that mom must be providing the little b. Now this also works the same right here. And the same thing on the other side. If this big B is this, that means that this little b right here has to come from up here. So it's essentially working backwards to figure out that that's mom. Mom goes here. And the question is saying is what's mom's genotype? Little b. And if you wanted to go even further, what's her phenotype? Well, we know that mom has blue eyes. Look at that. This is true genetics mastery. All right. By this point, you should now be able to try them on your own. You should read and answer the rest of the Punnett Square Level 1 questions, and when you feel like you're ready, take the Punnett Square Level 1 quiz. Genetics and Punnett Squares are some things that sometimes click for students and sometimes doesn't, so please make sure that you know it before you take the quiz. There are copies of the Punnett Square guide if you like to write them out. The copies are left over near the skill sheet trays. Feel free to take as many as you need, but don't be a treat killer. Good luck on the quiz.